Greetings, dear friends, fellow programmers, and those aspiring to be. I just wanted to greet you from this amazing site, and now we are ready to go back to our lesson, so see you soon!
Today, we are taking a deep dive into the topic that sparks a lot of attention nowadays. I'm talking about the difference between a senior and a junior developer, and basically I'm going to share all of my experiences about the differences, approaches, and basically everything you need to know in order to be able to differentiate between those two terms. And also I'll squeeze in a few of my personal stories that might be funny or maybe just plain boring. So trust me, it's more than just syntax, it is way more complicated than that. So sit back, grab yourself a cup of coffee and enjoy the video. So we're going to get started by rewinding a bit and going back to the moment when I was working on building Penny Planner. That was about time when I hired one of the brightest people and my dear employee who started working on admin panel of this application. At that point, the front-end and user-facing parts were already done and completely implemented, and I told her, your job is to build the admin panel, gave her the list of pages and functionalities that need to be put in place, and I waited to see what is going to happen. So basically what happened is that she did not ask any questions about the architecture she should use, about the approaches, about the desired functionalities, about the code style, naming conventions, or anything at all. She just started typing and doing stuff the way she would do probably on her own. And do not get me wrong, for a beginner, it was great. She introduced service-based approach, but the issue was that the entire project was built using domain-driven design, CQRS, and mediator patterns. After a few days of her working on her own, I wanted to see what was happening and how the things were going, and basically there was one of the moments when I started seeing exactly what I expected. The naming conventions were not so great. Also, the code quality was not the best because there was no single responsibility principle included, it was not even in sight, and when you combine those things with a different architectural approach, you end up with code that is barely usable. The only issue in that situation was not her lack of knowledge, because that's expected, and junior developers cannot know what is the best approach to do things, to tackle problems, because they're junior developers. And the only issue that could be handled in a better way was the fact that she asked no questions. So the only thing that was supposed to happen was that she prepared a list of questions, she approached me, asked me those questions, and we would discuss how things should be handled, and the final solution would 100% be way more close to what was already in place. Now, this might sound like irrelevant topic, just a personal story, but it is really not the case, because while interviewing people in GitHub and other companies where I was working and interviewing people, I saw that it is so common thing that people do not ask questions when they get interview tasks that I had to bring it up here, because on interviews, you end up with some live coding session very often, and in those situations, it is so common that people just start typing and solving the problem and not thinking about the proper way to address things. But we'll come back to that a bit later. Do not worry, I'll expand on that even further. Now let me go back to myself. When I was just getting started, and when I landed my first job as a programmer, my thinking was, well, what is such a significant difference between junior and senior developers when I already know the syntax of C# and the senior developers cannot imaginatively generate different approaches to handle stuff and generate specific syntax that is just available to them, because I learned everything there was about the syntax and I knew how to build anything. And yeah, boy, was I wrong. Knowing syntax is very insignificant thing. Nowadays, even more so because of the help of AI, and we have so much information at our disposal online. We can Google stuff, we can ask ChatGPT or any other AI tools, and they will just throw at us any syntax we like. It is no issue to just know how to write code. The most significant thing is the experience that you gain over years of working in action. I mean, we do not have to go any further than this. When I started working in that company, I was completely unable to understand what colleagues were trying to explain to me because of the lack of terminology understanding. So every single time I asked something, it was a waste of time for both me and the colleagues of mine because I was unable to understand them. So yeah, it is not enough to only know the syntax. But of course, as you gain experience, you start seeing patterns everywhere. You collect experiences from all the issues you stumbled upon during your career, and you collect those experiences, and then next time you know how to approach solving certain problems because you know what might be the common pitfalls for certain solutions of that problem. And also, that means that your capability to predict problems with entire architecture of solutions is going to grow as you get experience, because you will be able to predict many of the downfalls which junior developers would just not be able to. Not because they're not smart enough, far from it, but only because they did not fail enough times in the past. Failing is the only way for you to collect experiences, because you need to stumble upon a problem that you do not know how to solve properly and then learn how to solve it from whatever way you like, and then grow as a professional and be able to rise up to the challenge next time. And when you do that enough times, your skills and the quality of your solutions will grow exponentially. As a senior developer, you are not thinking about only building code that works. You are supposed to be thinking about the maintainability of the code, about its extensibility, about its testability, and about everybody else who is going to look at that code to be able to understand it as quickly as possible and to make your code be as intuitive, as clean, and to follow all the best practices that it can. Now, let me tell you a story about a company where I was working at, which lost millions of dollars because of this. So I was working in this video streaming company that was using external service for video streaming functionalities, and they had a fairly poorly written solution that was very hard-coded. It had very strong dependencies, hard-coded, and it was very difficult to first navigate the code, understand it, maintain it, and do anything with it. And then, to make things even worse, at some point, the service provider for video streaming they were using was going to be deprecated. So they had to react extremely quickly to go completely in a different direction, to use a completely different service that was using completely different approaches for handling data, for providing stream chunks and things of those sorts. And they had to rewrite the entire logic that was used for video streaming, and it took about 6 months for the team of all developers, which was about 25 developers. And after we managed to complete the working solution, there were countless problems, countless bugs, issues, problems that were happening all over the place, and we barely made through. But after that, the company made the right decision to rewrite the entire product from scratch, and then they invested into doing the research and using the proper architecture for their solution. And that meant that we were using very flexible, very scalable approaches, which meant that we had loose coupling across the entirety of the application. And then, to make things even better for my story, after a few months after this solution was ready, the service provider, which was new service provider at this point, also started saying that they were going to get deprecated. So we had to pivot again. And this time it took about 2 months for a team of 6 developers to update entire service for video streaming. And this time the number of issues was substantially lower than the first time. So by just using good coding practices and making your code scalable and extensible and modular, with loose coupling included, you end up saving so much time and money. And this is something that a junior developer is not able to do because it requires a lot of hands-on experience, even more so with such a complicated product like this one was. But even if we neglect that, it is very difficult for people without actual real-life experiences to know how to handle those situations properly. Now I think we can go back to our discussion about the job interview, and we will compare the approaches that are common, like standard, when you take the average of a junior developer and a senior developer. So they have a live coding interview where they get a task and they're supposed to solve it. So how junior developers in most cases approach this is they see the task, they read it, and they get started with solving it right away. They do not ask questions at all. So when they do that, they are basically preventing themselves from understanding what are the clients, or in this case, interviewers' expectations. They do not know what is the focus of the solution. Maybe the solution should not be focused on performance when it comes to memory, but should focus on time or anything out there. And if they do not ask questions, the interviewer is just going to sit and watch them fail. And even if they do get to a solution, that solution will not be what interviewer wanted to see in the beginning. And when it comes to senior developers, they get started by asking as many questions as they need to fill all the gaps, and then try to foresee what are the potential issues with this task, so they can ask the interviewer all the necessary questions, clear them out, and then know how to approach problem solving. And when they do solve the problem, they're still not done. Then when they have a working solution, working algorithm for the problem itself, they should invest time and energy into improving the solution, to make it more solid, to make it follow all the best coding practices, to have a single responsibility, to have good naming conventions, to be without unnecessary nesting, to be as easy to understand, navigate, extend, or reduce its functionalities as possible. And senior developers usually land this way differently than junior developers do. Now that we covered this, I think there is one more very important thing to mention, and that is tools. Because as a senior developer, you've gone through so many different tools while working in different companies, while working on different projects with different clients. You see different technologies they're using, different tools, different organizational things, different whatever. And you collect a few of those along the way. And then when you make your personal workflow, you know which tools you enjoy using and which tools give you the most benefits, and then you can just incorporate them to make your life easier and more comfortable. And here there is no cookie cutter solution. I cannot name tools that you will find useful. This is where you need to invest time and be open-minded when encountering different tools, and to figure out what might be beneficial for you personally, because I might not enjoy what you will enjoy and other way around. So I just want you to be open-minded about this and always look for ways to improve your workload, because when you do that, you will end up being able to do more within less time, and that is always a good thing to have. Then also, one very important thing is to have the right mindset. So as a junior developer, you have to always strive towards improvement, growth, learning new concepts, building stuff, trying out stuff, figuring what works, what doesn't work. That way, you will skyrocket your journey towards becoming a senior developer, and you will end up there way quicker than if you were not doing those things. If you were just sitting at your 8 hours a day work job, and you just do what you're told and do it in a way that is the least expected amount for a solution. In that approach, you will still have like 5 years of experience, but those 5 years are not the same as 5 years of a person who was constantly looking for ways to challenge the status quo, to improve their capabilities, to constantly build something, to grow in any way possible, learn constantly, and improve in all areas that are important for a programmer. So, what would be my final advice for people who are just getting started? The first thing is you should always strive towards learning and mastering new stuff. Then, you should tackle problems with eagerness to grow and learn from them, not see them as something that is very problematic for you. You should see the problems as a growth opportunity for you. And finally, the third point, when you build something of your own, you should not see it as a failure if it doesn't earn you money, because that is something I keep seeing all the time with other people. They see their projects as failures if they do not earn millions of dollars out of them. And that is just something that you will gain at certain point. If you keep trying and keep growing, you will certainly end up in a place where you are able to build something truly outstanding that is going to be valuable enough to bring you the monetary benefits that you expect. So just think of every project you build as a learning opportunity, and if anything else comes out of it, it is just a bonus. That way, you will never feel disappointed if your project doesn't meet your expectations, because it will. You will always, every single time, learn new stuff, and in the end of building that project, you will be at least 1% smarter and a better developer than when you were getting started. Every single time. It is just a question, how much will you progress along the way? And also, I wanted to remind you that the programming world is an amazing place to be at, because you have endless options to do and build different stuff, that there is basically something interesting for almost everyone willing to learn, grow, work hard, because it's really not that easy. It requires constant learning, constant working on your skills, and in the end, it pays off. And you're practically unable to fail and lose anything, because you will just keep gaining experiences, which in the end, if you do not have any monetized personal projects, you can monetize your skills on the job market. So there is no risk, basically. So there you have it, folks. The difference between a junior and a senior developer is not in syntax. It is in a different holistic approach that a senior developer has that is just impossible for a junior developer to have, because it requires years of going through the trenches and being in a lot of stress and pain along the way in order to gain valuable experience that is going to allow you to be able to call yourself a senior developer. And yeah, as usual, thank you for joining, and if you found this video useful, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel, because that way you're helping me out and I really appreciate it. Also, if you have any questions or you would like to see any other topics covered, feel free to go to the comment section and leave your mark there. I will gladly reply and try to address all of your recommendations. Until the next video, Thank you for watching and have an amazing day. Happy coding!